Welcome to Terran Apex Protocol, where the galaxy keeps underestimating humanity and keeps regretting it. If these stories are your kind of story, subscribe and stay with us. My name's Atlas. Today, an empire that has ended 94 wars with one merciful shot kills the human flagship in 51 seconds, and then discovers that all 400 human ships have an answer ready. Let's begin. High Conductor Maul had ended 94 wars, and he could name every flagship he had killed to end them. On the eve of battle, he recited the list the way other species recited prayers. Aboard the Unison's Edge, the 95th name was already chosen, and the 95th name was CNS Sequoia. Cantor Sevic listened to the recitation from the analysis tier, 3 decks below the conductor's dais, and added his voice to the chord that carried it. Every Vrax on every one of the 900 hulls in the formations was singing the same chord at the same moment. The chord was more than ceremony. The chord was command itself. The Vrax called it the lattice. One harmonic, held by every throat in the fleet, flowing outward from the conductor's ship through the relay choirs, picket vessels whose entire purpose was to carry the song to the formation's edges. Orders were key changes. A fleet of 900 ships could turn together inside 2 seconds, because no Vrax waited to be told anything. They heard the new key and became it. There was one shame deeper than cowardice among the Vrax, and it was falling out of key. A voice that cracked alone, outside the chord, was a mind that had cut itself off from every other Vrax alive. Children were drilled against it before they could walk. Sevic had seen a cantor fall out of key once, during the Threx campaign, and the memory still made his throat clench. Threx was also why Sevic believed in Maul. At Threx, the enemy had massed a fleet of 11,000 ships around a single command vessel, and Maul had killed exactly one of them. The other 10,999 surrendered within an hour, and 900 million soldiers went home to their families alive. Decapitation mercy, the doctrine was called. Sever the head and spare the body. 94 species had been built close enough to the same shape for it to work 94 times. We do not slaughter herds, Maul liked to say. We unburden them of the one mind that drives them onto the spears. Sevic wanted to believe the humans would be the 95th herd. His pre-battle analysis said they almost certainly were. Almost was the word that kept him at his station through 2 full rest cycles, because buried in the intercepted human comm traffic was a pattern he could not classify. In every fleet Sevic had ever studied, orders flowed downward, and reports flowed up. In the human fleet, the thing flowing downward was questions. Senior vessels kept asking junior vessels, again and again, the same strange phrase. Intent confirmed. They asked it of cruiser captains. They asked it of supply tenders. They waited, every time, for the answer. Sevic filed the anomaly under primitive indiscipline, signed the analysis, and rejoined the chord. The lattice that night was singing in the victory key. They had sung it 94 times before, and it had never once been wrong. 11 light minutes away, Commander Owen Tran was losing an argument with a fuel manifest. The manifest claimed his tender carried enough deuterium to feed a battle line for 9 hours. Tran had been a logistics officer for 19 years, and he knew that battles drank twice what any manifest promised, and then asked for dessert. His ship was the CNS Pack Mule, an unarmed supply tender. Hull number 391 of 400 on the 3rd Relief Fleet's command, ladder. The ladder was the succession list. If command ever devolved all the way down to the Pack Mule, the polite assumption was that the war had already been lost twice. "Sir," said Lieutenant Mara Joss from the helm, "Traffic Control wants to know why we parked 6 rescue tugs at Grid Tango." Nobody ordered tugs at Tango. Nobody ordered the battle to drift sunward either, Transcend said, but it will. Ships fall back along their fuel. When somebody over there gets hurt, Tango is where they will be hurting. Tell traffic control the tugs are mine and they stay. Joss relayed it. She was 23 years old and had been aboard for 5 months, which meant she had spent 5 months learning that her captain stocked shelves for disasters that had not happened yet. So far, his record on disasters was perfect, and she had stopped asking how. At 1900 hours, Admiral Etta Vance's face appeared on every bridge in the fleet for the final brief. Instead of arrows on a map, she gave them one sentence. Greenholm has 3 million civilians on it, and Greenholm does not fall while one hull of this fleet still answers. Then she did the thing she always did, the thing the Vrax had filed under indiscipline. She went down the roll, all 400 ships, and asked each captain to say the intent back in their own words. Cruisers, carriers, minesweepers, hospital ships. When she reached hull 391, she said, "Pack mule, talk to me. Keep the guns fed, keep the lanes clear, and keep 3 million people breathing behind us," Tran said. "Everything else is detail." "That will do, Commander," Vance said, and moved to hull 392. Joss waited until the brief ended. "Why does she do that, sir?" "The roll call. It takes an hour." "So the plan lives in 400 heads instead of 1, Tran said. He initialed the manifest and did not look up. Admiral Vance had 11 hours left to live and 51 seconds of battle. The fleets met above Greenholm at 0600, fleet standard. The Vrax formation came in singing the hunting key, 900 hulls moving like the fingers of one hand. At the center of the hand rode the Unison's edge, the decapitation lance running hot along her spine. The lance was the most expensive single weapon the Vrax had ever built. It took the focus power of 40 escort ships to charge it, and while it charged, the whole formation had to contract around the flagship like a fist closing. One shot, then an hour of weakness. In 94 wars, one shot had always been enough. Sevek watched the firing solution resolve on his display. The humans had made it easy. CNS Sequoia rode near the front of their line, broadcasting on an open channel, wearing her command codes like a banner. Maul keyed the shift, and 900 crews slid into the Mercy key without a breath of hesitation. For the 95th time, Maul said softly, "We spare the body. Fire." The lance crossed 11,000 kilometers in a heartbeat and opened the Sequoia from bow to engines. Admiral Etta Vance was on the fleet channel when it hit, halfway through a sentence, saying, "All ships, Greenholm holds while one hull still an," and then there was no more Sequoia. 51 seconds. Sevek logged it with something close to grief, because 51 seconds was the fastest Mercy in Vrax history, and the war was over. Around him, 40,000 voices began the slow climb toward the surrender hymn. The gentle key the Vrax sang while a headless fleet drifted and broke and begged. They had sung it 94 times. Sevek knew every note the way he knew his own pulse. On his display, the human fleet did not drift. It did not scatter. The line held its shape, and through it the gunships kept firing on the exact firing cycle they had held before their admiral died. 9 seconds after the Sequoia broke apart, a new voice came up on the same open channel, on the same command codes, calm as a ferry schedule. "This is the flagship," said Captain Okoye of CNS Drumline. "Third Relief Fleet, the intent stands. Greenholm holds. Confirm." And 400 voices, minus 1, came back inside 3 seconds. Intent confirmed. Sevek ran the kill assessment again. The Sequoia was debris across 40 kilometers, every escape pod accounted for. Nothing larger than a hatch cover still holding power. He ran it a third time with the sensor gain doubled, because the alternative to a sensor error was an error in the shape of the universe. The data did not change. The enemy had lost its head and appeared not to have noticed. "Cantor," said the analysis tier supervisor, "why has the hymn not landed?" "Because they are not surrendering," Sevek said. The supervisor stared at him as if he had spoken in a dead language. 94 fleets had gone silent when their flagship died. Sevek watched the human fleet do something no species had ever done. It answered. On the dais, Maul absorbed the report in silence and reached the only conclusion his doctrine permitted. The Sequoia had been a decoy. Some cunning species hid the true command vessel and sacrificed a painted target, and the humans were cunning. Everyone said so. "Find me the true flagship," Maul ordered, and his voice carried no anger at all, only patience. "The body cannot be spared until the head is found." The hunt took 40 minutes because the Lance had to drink from 40 escorts again, and because the formation had to close its fist again, and the humans charged the fist every time it closed. Human destroyers came in on slashing runs against the contracted Vrax flanks, hit the exposed escorts, and were gone before the choirs could shift keys. Each run was small. Each run cost the Vrax 3 or 4 hulls and cost the humans 1. And the humans seemed to find the arithmetic acceptable. Analysis found the drumline transmitting on the command codes, coordinating the line exactly as the Sequoia had. The true flagship, hidden in the body of the fleet. Maul almost sang the relief. The Lance fired, and the drumline and Captain Okoye and 290 souls became light. 7 seconds, this time. "This is the flagship," said a voice from the carrier CNS Tarawa. "The intent stands. Confirm." "Intent confirmed," said the fleet. The third hunt took 30 minutes. The Lance killed the Tarawa, and the next voice took 5 seconds. A frigate captain this time, young enough that her voice had not finished settling. "This is the flagship. Confirm." Maul adapted. He was no fool whatever the day was doing to him. If the head kept regrowing, then the head was made of words, and words could be smothered. He ordered the choirs into the static key, and the Vrax fleet began drenching every human frequency with jamming, a wall of noise meant to make succession impossible. Kill the speaker, drown the channel, and let the next clerk in line inherit a fleet he could not talk to. For 6 minutes, Sevek believed it had worked. The human channels dissolved into hash. No commander spoke. The line should have begun to fray at the edges, ship by isolated ship, the way every fleet frayed when its voice was taken away. The line did not fray. The human ships closed up and kept fighting their dead admiral's intent in total silence, and then the answer came through anyway, crawling across the fleet by means Sevek's instruments barely bothered to monitor. Tight beam lasers, hull to hull. Signal lamps, actual lamps, flashing patterns that predated human spaceflight by 2 centuries. One destroyer swung close to another, and a human stood in an airlock window and moved 2 handheld lights in slow arcs. The message arrived everywhere, minutes slower and fully intact. "This is the flagship. The intent stands. Confirm." Sevek wrote in the margin of his file, "They have a succession custom for when the radio itself dies." Then he sat for a while with what that implied. The humans had a plan for losing their admiral, and a deeper plan for losing their entire voice, and the deeper plan was lamps. Sevek stopped logging the kills as victories. He started a new file instead, and gave it a title he would regret at his hearing. Behavioral Search, True Command Node. He mapped every human ship's maneuvers against the decisions a commander would have to make, looking for the hull whose movements showed knowledge of the whole plan, the hull the others were secretly following. The method was sound. The method had located hidden flagships in 6 previous wars. He let it run across 400 ships, and when the result came back, Sevek read it 4 times before he allowed himself to understand it. Every hull showed knowledge of the whole plan. The freighters maneuvered like ships that knew where the line would bend an hour before it bent. The minesweepers repositioned for retreats that had not been called yet. A supply tender, an unarmed nothing of a ship far behind the line, had staged rescue tugs at the exact grid where the human flank would later fold, before the battle had even started. There was no hidden flagship. By every behavioral measure Sevik possessed, the human fleet was 400 flagships pretending to be a fleet. He carried the finding to the dais himself. "High Conductor," he said, "I can find no command node, because command is not located anywhere. They have given the plan to everyone. Kill any ship, kill any 100 ships, and the plan keeps sailing." "That is not command," Maul said. "That is anarchy with discipline." "Yes," Sevik said, and his own voice wavered toward the rim of the key as he said it, the first time since childhood his throat had betrayed him. "I recommend we stop spending the lance." Maul did not stop. Doctrine, to Maul, was mercy before it was tactics, and a merciful man does not stop searching for the head just because the head is well hidden. The lance fired through the morning. A cruiser called Sablewood. A carrier whose name Sevik never learned. A minesweeper, of all things. Because by then the command codes had walked far down the ladder. The fleet was being run from a ship with a crew of 19, and being run well. 9 seconds, then 7, then 5, then 3. The silences between human commanders were getting shorter, as if the fleet had rehearsed every loss before it came. By the third hour, Maul had killed 11 flagships, and the human fleet had not yet been without a commander for 1 full minute. Behind the human line, the battle Tran was fighting was measured in pallets. The pack mule ran the gun line every 40 minutes, hull doors open, throwing fuel bladders and shell racks to destroyers that caught them on the move. Every run took the tender through the debris of ships she had resupplied an hour before. Joss flew the runs. She had stopped flinching at near hits sometime around the 4th one, mostly because Tran read manifests out loud while the hull rang in the tone of a man checking off groceries. "Magazines for the halberd," he said on the 5th run. "And tell her she is burning fuel like she is 20 again." "Heard that," said Captain Iphioma Bell on the supply channel. The halberd slid alongside, scorched down her whole port side, drinking from the transfer line like a foal. "Hello, mule. Still hiding back here with the groceries. Somebody has to carry them," Tran said. "You could have been carrying a battle group," Bell said. "I taught you. I am allowed to say it. 19 years since they offered you the line and you took a tender instead. Say the reason out loud, Owen. We might all be dead by dinner, so today is the day for it." Tran watched the fuel numbers climb. "Callum's Reach," he said. "There it is," Bell said. 9 years, and the first time you have said it where I could hear. Now say what happened." "I split the convoy," Tran said. "Raiders on the screen, 20 ships, 1 escort, me. I took the half I could cover and ran for the relay. The other half went dark 40 minutes later. 1,100 people, and I was not with them." "You saved 900, Bell said. "The math had no kind answer, and you did the math anyway, while the captains who refused to choose lost everything they were holding. Hear me, Owen. You did not lose half that convoy. You saved half. Learn the difference before this fleet needs you to know it." The fuel line chimed empty. For a moment, neither ship spoke. "Going to need you to say intent confirmed, Captain," Tran said at last. "It is the regulation." Bell laughed, and the laugh cost her. He could hear it. "Intent confirmed, mule. Buy you a drink on Greenholm when this is over. They are good people down there, and somebody promised them we would answer." The halberd peeled away toward the line. Tran stayed at the viewport longer than he needed to, watching the Vrax formation instead, the way he watched everything, as freight. And the formation had freight. 3 picket vessels held station in a perfect arc behind the Vrax line, equidistant, untouched, doing nothing any sensor could call fighting. "Every fleet has a supply line," he said. "Sir," Joss said, "theirs is energy-fed. They do not have one." "They have one," Tran said. "It just is not carrying fuel. Watch the pickets, Joss. Whatever those 3 ships are hauling, that whole formation starves without it." He logged the grids of all 3 pickets in the freight ledger, under miscellaneous, and went back to his manifests. He had no way of knowing yet that he had just written down the only map of the Vrak's nervous system in human hands. Between runs, Joss kept one ear on the civilian band, even though regulations said to lock it out. Greenholm was down there under the battle, 3 million people in shelters, listening to their sky burn. The colony net had carried school lessons all morning, somebody's idea of keeping the children calm. A teacher's voice was walking 9-year-olds through long division while the fleet died overhead to keep her roof intact. Joss said nothing about it to anyone. But after the 4th run, she taped a note above her console, in the spot where the targeting reticle would be on a real warship. It said, "Lane stays open. Tran saw it and let it stay." Aboard the Unison's Edge, the 11th empty kill broke something in high conductor Maul that Threx had built. He stood on the dais through a long silence while the lattice held its key around him, waiting, 900 ships breathing in his paws. "I have offered this species mercy 11 times, he said, "and 11 times they have hidden the head and fed me bodies. Then there will be no 12th offer. Cantors, the key of ash, all ships. Burn the body until what is left begs." Sevik had sung the key of ash exactly once in training, and never in war. The Vraks did not slaughter herds. That was the entire pillar of the doctrine, the thing that made them better than the species they pacified. The chord shifted, and for the first time in Sevik's life, the lattice sounded wrong. Across the formation, whole choirs lagged the change, voices smearing between the keys, a fleet-wide shudder of throats that did not want the note they were being asked to hold. The shift completed. It took 4 seconds instead of 2. Maul heard the lag and said nothing. Sevik recorded it, because recording things was the only act of conscience available to him. Then the 900 ships of the Vrak's Unison stopped hunting the human head and threw their full weight onto the human body. The slaughter order reached the human fleet as a wall of fire 300 ships wide. And on the pack mule, 2 grids back from the line with her, holds half empty. The threat board went from amber to a color Joss had never seen it wear. "Sir," she said. "I see it," Tran said. He keyed the supply channel, and his hands were already pulling the next manifest. "All tenders, all tugs, this is the pack mule. They just stopped looking for the flagship. Stage everything forward, everything. The line is about to get hungry." The key of ash earned its name in the 4th hour. The Vraks stopped maneuvering for position and simply advanced, 900 hulls abreast, grinding fire into the human line faster than any line could shed it. Human ships began to die the slow way, the way the Lance had never made anyone die, compartment by compartment, with their crews still fighting the fires. The destroyer Carmody broke in half holding the left flank. 2 minesweepers died, keeping the lane to Greenholm swept, because the intent said the lane stayed open, and the intent did not have a clause about the cost. And through all of it, the command codes kept walking down the ladder, because the Vraks could not help themselves. 94 wars had trained their choirs to converge on any ship that spoke with command in its voice, and the reflex outlived the doctrine. Every time a human hull said, "This is the flagship," the weight of 100 guns swung onto it within minutes. The humans knew. Sevik watched them know. Captain after captain took up the codes anyway, said the line on an open channel, fought on under the falling weight, and passed the codes 1 rung down with their last transmitter. The voices were getting younger. That was the detail Sevik could not stop logging. The first successors had been gray admirals in waiting. By the 5th hour, the codes were being spoken by lieutenant commanders, by a mining survey captain, by a voice that cracked on the word flagship and said it again, twice, so nobody would mistake her. The mining survey captain held command for 22 minutes, which the fleet would later learn was the longest tenure of the afternoon. He had never commanded anything except geologists. It did not matter. He inherited a plan he already knew, asked 4 questions, and made 2 adjustments to the screening pattern that a War College board would later call textbook. He kept the lane to Greenholm open through the worst convergence of the day. When the Vrax fire found him, he was mid-sentence, passing a fueling instruction to a tanker. His successor finished the instruction 11 seconds later, as if the 2 voices belonged to the same person. On the Unison's edge, Sevik clipped that recording and saved it under a new heading. He had stopped calling the file a behavioral search. The new heading, written in old liturgical script, read, "How a species without a chord still sings." On the pack mule, Tran heard the ladder burning down and did the worst arithmetic of his life. Position 391. There had been 390 names between him and the war this morning. The fleet roster on his display now showed dozens of those names gray with damage, comms dark, bridges gone, ships alive, but past commanding anything. The codes were skipping the crippled like a stone skipping water. Joss watched the same display. "Sir," she said, and got no further with it. "Run the manifests, Lieutenant," Tran said. "Whatever happens, the line still has to eat." In the 6th hour, the Vrax wall found the human hospital convoy. 3 white hulls, full of burned and broken crews, pulled from the morning's wrecks, making for the far side of Greenholm too slowly. A Vrax assault wedge came around the flank with firing solutions already sung, and the only warship in reach was the Halberd, and Bell did not hesitate for one breath. She put her ship sideways between the wedge and the white hulls, all engines, all shields forward, and held the gap for 2 minutes and 40 seconds, while the hospital convoy crawled clear. The Halberd did not come out of the gap. Her last transmission skipped the fleet channel entirely. It came in on the supply channel, person to person, addressed by name, while her bridge burned. "Owen, listen to me. The ladder is 9 names from you, and the 9 are good people, and good people are dying fast today. So hear your old teacher one more time. When it reaches you, you will want to apologize to the fleet for being a tender pilot. You will not do that. When it reaches you, don't you dare apologize for the math. You are the only captain in this fleet who has already paid for knowing how to do it." The channel hissed and ended. On the pack mule's bridge, nobody said anything. Tran stood with his hands flat on the manifest table for 4 full seconds, and then he straightened. His next order was about fuel. His order after that was about the 3 Vrax pickets in the freight ledger. Joss understood that grief on this ship was going to look like work until further notice. The pack mule was now the lowest hull still answering on the ladder, and the ladder was burning down toward it. The 9 names lasted 90 minutes. A cruiser captain, then her successor, killed in the same converging fire that always followed the codes. A tug squadron commander who held the fleet together for a quarter hour. A reserve colonel who had never wanted ships in the first place. Each one said the line. Each one fought the same intent. Greenholm holds, the lane stays open, and the line never bent past saving, because every helm in the fleet already knew where it was supposed to bend back. At 19 minutes past the 7th hour, the codes arrived at Hull 391. They came as a soft chime on a supply tender's command board, the sound the system made for a routine handoff. The engineers who built it had never imagined the ladder burning this far down. Tran looked at the chime. 31 ships of the 3rd Relief Fleet were dead, with 4,100 people in them, Vance and Okoye and Bell among them. What remained was 369 hulls and a colony, and him. He keyed the fleet channel. He did not announce himself as the flagship, not yet, because the moment he did, 100 guns would begin to swing. He said, "All ships, this is the pack mule. Intent stands unchanged, Greenholm holds, the lane stays open, confirm." And 369 voices, knowing exactly what ship they were answering to, came back without 1 second of doubt. Intent confirmed. Aboard the Unison's edge, That chorus landed on a fleet already staggering. Sevek had the casualty boards in front of him, and the boards said the unthinkable plainly. The body was not breaking. The Ashkey had spent the Vrax formation against a line that bent and fed itself and bent back. The pickets were reporting human tugs everywhere in the wreck field, pulling survivors out of hulls from both fleets in the middle of the burning. Sevek totaled the day, because totaling things was his office. The Lance had fired 11 times, and each firing had bought the humans an hour of a contracted, half-blind Vrax formation to carve at. The escort screen was down by a third. 31 human ships were dead, and the killing had cost 48 Vrax hulls, most of them spent in the 4 hours since the Ashkey began. No Vrax war had ever produced such an exchange against an enemy whose heaviest combatant was outmassed by every ship of the Vrax line. By any doctrine Sevek knew, the numbers now described the unison bleeding to death against freight captains, and under the arithmetic sat the thing he could not put in a column. Vrax crews fought on order and lived in the cord, and the cord had been dissonant for hours. He could hear the fleet getting tired of the note it was holding. Somewhere below decks, a junior cantor had asked her section leader a question that would have been unthinkable at dawn. If their dead keep answering, what happens when we run out of ships to make them answer with? Maul stood on the dais and looked, for the first time Sevek could remember, like a being his own age. "Cantor," he said, "tell me who commands them now." "A supply tender, high conductor. Unarmed. We believe the officer is a logistics specialist." "A freight clerk," Maul said. 94 wars, and I am dueling a freight clerk who will not die in the correct order." Then he gathered himself, and Sevek watched 400 years of doctrine straighten the old conductor's spine. There was one right left, older than the Lance, the courtesy the Unison had offered at Threx. "Open a channel to every human hull," Maul said. "All of them at once. If they will not let me find the head, I will ask the body to give it up." On the pack mule, the comm board lit with a contact format nobody had seen before, a Vrax carrier wave addressed to every human hull at once. Joss looked at Tran. "Sir, they are hailing the entire fleet. Individually, all of us." "Then it is rude to talk over them," Tran said. "All ships, this is the pack mule. Hold formation, hold fire, and listen." He had no idea what was coming. He knew only that an enemy who wanted to talk was an enemy not currently shooting, and the line could use the breath. The channel opened, and Maul's voice went out across the whole battle, formal and weary, and, in its own way, kind. "Ships of humanity, you have fought past every mercy I know. I offer the last one. Identify your command vessel, one hull, and it alone receives an honorable termination, and the body of your fleet will be spared and escorted home. This is the mercy of Threx. 900 million live today because a fleet accepted it. Name your flagship, and the dying ends." What happened next took a single human heartbeat, and Sevek would spend the rest of his life writing about it. 369 ships answered at once. One phrase, perfectly together: gunships and tankers and minesweepers and hospital hulls. A chorus from a species that could not even sing. "This is the flagship." And then, in the same second, the dead answered too. Across the wreck field, 31 emergency beacons began transmitting with the final watts left in their batteries. They were the last powered fragments of the Sequoia, and the Drumline, and the Tarawa, and the Halberd, and 27 more. Every one of them was bound by an honor custom older than the human navy itself, and the custom said that a ship's last act is to answer. "Third Relief Fleet. This is the flagship. This is the flagship. This is the flagship." All 400 ships, the living and the dead, claiming the flag at once. The lattice cracked. Sevek heard it happen around him in real time, voices falling out of key across the whole formation. Hundreds of shamed throats at once. The cord shivered apart into something no Vrax had ever heard a fleet make. Fear, unsynchronized. The supervisor beside him had stopped singing entirely. On the dais, Maul gripped the rail and said nothing at all, because Doctrine had no page for an enemy whose dead refused to stop answering. And 11 grids back, on an unarmed tender, the freight clerk reached for the ledger he had been writing all day. "Joss," Tran said, "send to tug groups 4, 7, and 9, the ones we parked this afternoon. Execute on the pickets." All 3, same moment. The tugs were not warships, and what they carried was not elegant. Salvage charges, breaching frames, and the industrial jammers human yards used to blanket comm bands during hull repairs. All day, run by run, Tran had staged them in the debris near the 3 relay pickets, logged as miscellaneous. All day he had been provisioning 2 battles, the one his fleet was bleeding through and the one he intended to end. He had spent 19 years feeding a fleet. Nobody alive knew better how to starve one. The 3 picket grids erupted within the same second. Jamming first, then charges against the relay arrays, and the arc of vessels whose entire purpose was carrying the song went silent in 3 places at once. The lattice did not fade, it severed. Aboard the Unison's edge, Sevik felt the fleet vanish around him mid-note. 900 ships, and every one of them was suddenly, for the first time in any living Vrak's memory, alone. No cord, no key, no conductor in their throats. Crews who had never made a decision without 40,000 voices around them sat in their own silence, in single ships, in the dark. The formation that had been a closing hand for 94 wars drifted apart into 900 separate fingers, each waiting for an order that could no longer arrive. On every human bridge, the weapons boards went green. 369 ships held firing solutions on a fleet that could not coordinate a retreat, and 369 captains asked one question down the channel: intent. Tran looked at the board a long moment. 9 years ago at Callum's Reach he had split a convoy, and the math had been right. And he had spent every year since carrying the half he could not cover. The fleet was watching. Bell's voice was still in his ear. He made the same choice again, and this time he made it whole. "All ships, this is the flagship," Tran said, and saying it cost him nothing now. "Split by squadron. Odd numbers hold weapons on the Vrax formation and do not fire unless fired upon. Even numbers, launch every tug, every shuttle, every spare hand. There are burning hulls on both sides of this field, and the intent says people keep breathing. There's 2. Go." Half the human fleet kept its guns level. The other half flung itself into the wreckage, tugs and longboats swarming hulls with Vrax script on them, cutting into compartments, hauling out singers who had never been touched by an alien hand. The Vrax could not even discuss it. Each ship watched it happen alone. It took 11 minutes for High Conductor Maul to do the unthinkable. With no lattice to carry his will and no choir to dress his voice, he opened a bare channel, solo. He spoke into the silence the way no conductor had ever spoken, his voice cracking alone where the chord should have been. "Human flagship. 94 fleets I have spared by killing 1 ship. Yours is the first whose head I could not find, because you keep it in 400 places, and some of those places are dead and answer anyway. Conductor to conductor, I ask for terms. Except you have no conductor, and I no longer believe in mine." Every Vrax in the formation heard their supreme commander fall out of key, alone, on an open band, and not one of them felt shame. Sevik checked. He surveyed the crews afterward, all of them, and what they reported feeling was release. Tran answered the way he answered everything, like a man reading from a clipboard. "Terms are on the manifest," Tran said. "Power down, and my tugs take your wounded first." 6 weeks later, the Greenholm Accords were signed in orbit, over the wreck field, because Tran refused to hold them anywhere the dead could not attend. 3 million civilians on the planet below watched the signatures go through. So did 31 beacons, still faintly answering. What baffled the wider Vrax unison in those first weeks was the surrender itself. Their delegations kept asking, with genuine confusion, to meet the strategist who had defeated High Conductor Maul, and kept being introduced to a supply officer, and kept assuming the humans were hiding the real one. It took Cantor Sevic's published analysis to end the embarrassment. The paper ran 400 pages, and history remembers 11 words of his summary above all the rest. "We built a fleet that dies with one mind," Sevic wrote. "They built 400 minds that agree on one thing, and you cannot decapitate an idea every sailor carries." The unison did what no one expected an empire of 94 victories to do. It went back to school. Within a year, Vrax academies were teaching what the instructors carefully called the human chord. Every voice taught the whole song. Junior cantors drilled to sing on alone. Whole crews graded on what they did in silence. The first generation hated it. The second generation could not imagine fighting any other way. Maul resigned his baton the morning after the Accords. He turned down the honor fleet and the pension, and took a small unarmed courier to Threx, where the wrecks of an 11,000-ship surrender still orbited in their mausoleum lanes. He spends his years there now, the reports say, touring hull after silent hull, asking the same question of each one: whether his single merciful shot truly spared the body, or only spared the conductor's conscience. Nobody on Threx has given him an answer yet. He keeps asking anyway, and Sevic, who visits him twice a year, says the asking has made him gentler than victory ever did. The Vrax gave the Third Relief Fleet one gift that no human asked for. At the first joint memorial, 40,000 voices wove the names of all 400 hulls into the lattice itself, every name a held note. The living ships and the 31 dead ones, Sequoia to Pack Mule. They are the first alien names ever carried in the chord. Vrax crews sing them at every change of watch now, on the far side of the galaxy, in ships humans will never see. Earth offered Tran the Admiralty, of course. They offered him the rebuilt Sequoia, his name on the Academy Doctrine Hall, a seat at any table he wanted. He listened politely all the way through, the way he read manifests, and then he pointed out that 1,100 Vrax relief convoys needed provisioning along the new peace corridor. Somebody who knew the routes had to run resupply, he said. The Pack Mule's manifest was already loaded. He was sorry, but the schedule was the schedule. The board approved it. The board had by then read Bell's last transmission, which the fleet had entered into the permanent record over Tran's one and only formal objection. There is a copy under glass at the Academy. Cadets touched the frame for luck before logistics exams, which would have made Iphioma Bell laugh until she needed a chair. So the last anyone official saw of Owen Tran, he was leading a convoy out of Greenholm orbit, one human tender at the head of 40 mixed hulls. Half of them were Vrax, all of them singing or humming or whatever their crews did to pass the dark. Lieutenant Mara Joss had the helm. Somewhere past the outer marker, she asked him the question the whole fleet had learned not to ask. "Sir, if it is ever us, the Pack Mule, the ship that does not come home, what does the fleet do then?" Tran checked the manifest one more time before he answered, because he was always going to be that man. And Joss found she did not need the answer anyway. It was already in her own mouth, the way it was in 400 mouths, the way it would be in 4,000. This is the Flagship. The Unison's first mixed Academy-class graduates next year, humans and Vrax in the same choir, and the instructors report that the cadets have started asking dangerous, wonderful questions, beginning with why.